Kia ora, everyone. I'm Cole from Aotearoa Christians for Peace in Palestine. Welcome to another one in our webinar series, hearing from Palestinian voices from on the ground and other theological voices from around the area. Um, we are, really privileged to be joined tonight by Areej Masoud from Bethlehem, and I'll introduce her shortly. But before we get going, I just wanted to first of all open with a prayer, and also before that, just to acknowledge this whenua and the shared colonial struggles between Palestine and here in Aotearoa, wanted to acknowledge tangata whenua in this land and who never ceded sovereignty of their land, and that we are. As I say, experiencing the repercussions and the residue of the same colonial violence that Palestine is currently facing, that we have experienced and participated in here in Aotearoa as well. So, with that, we'll pray to start, and then I'll introduce the dish, and we'll jump into things. So, hey God, thank you so much for bringing us here tonight. Thank you that we can gather from long distances to hear from wonderful people. Thank you, God, for Areej. We pray that you enter the space, you be with us all, and bless her words as she shares with us tonight, Lord, in your great name. Amen. So Areej is a Palestinian Christian living in Bethlehem. She'll introduce herself a bit more, but she did her studies at Bethlehem University, a beautiful university in the centre of Bethlehem that I was very fortunate to be attending last year for a short while as well. And she is the founder of Khayari Women's Empowerment Organisation in Bethlehem. Real privilege to have you here this evening, Areej. And I'll hand over to you to kind of take us away with a bit of a presentation, and then at the end of that, we're going to have a bit of Q&A for people as well, if there's any questions that come from that.
Thank you so much.
If people do have questions, just chuck them in the chat, message them in the chat below, and I'll field them through to Areej at the end. Kia ora.
Thank you so much, Cole, for organizing all of this, and saying thank you everyone for being here for this conversation. And I always look forward to hold space for important conversations like these. And as Cole has introduced me, I'm from Bethlehem, and I've lived in Bethlehem my most of my life, actually. And I'm a Christian Palestinian, and I've heard many questions around the world where they ask me, "Oh, you're from Palestine, so when did you convert?" I was like, "What do you mean? I'm born Christian. Jesus was born here, and the Nativity Church that you see in the image on the left side of the screen is actually 5 minutes walking distance from where I live. So if we're born in the same era, we would be neighbors and probably drinking coffee together at some point." Um, so Bethlehem is located in the West Bank. And if you look at the map on the right side of the map, I don't know if you can see my mouse on the map. Yeah. So Bethlehem is right here. It's very close to Jerusalem. It's south of Jerusalem. It's actually 15 minutes driving distance from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. But because of how you see the colored territories are, it has a meaning. And the meaning is that we are the same geographical location, but we're divided by apartheid, occupation, and policies. And so Jerusalem, for example, I'm not allowed to go into Jerusalem. And as a Christian, I can say that I've never celebrated Easter in Jerusalem as well because of the restrictions and how difficult it's made for me to go into Jerusalem, even though it's only 15 minutes away. So for giving context, when we say West Bank, this is what we mean with the West Bank. It's the colored zone on your right side, in the eastern parts, and then Gaza Strip would be on the shore on the Mediterranean Sea, where you see here. And even though West Bank and Gaza are both Palestine, I'm not allowed into Gaza, and people from Gaza are not also allowed into the West Bank. And so again, it's another example of where I've never been to Gaza before. And it's easier to meet someone from Gaza around the world than meeting them in person in Palestine itself. So it's just a reflection of what reality on ground looks like. And as you would see on this map, if you start looking from the left side of the screen, you would see that Palestine is the green zone on the map. And with continuous wars and land grab, you can look how different it looks in 2005. And this is much worse than, like today is much worse than what you see in 2005. There's barely any land left. So the green zone, there's barely any Palestinian land for Palestinians to basically live and survive. Even the West Bank zone where I showed you in the previous map, it looks continuous, but you can see how fragmented even the West Bank areas are because there's settlements on them, on those Palestinian lands that are taking Palestinian lands, and they're Jewish only roads, Israeli only roads that Palestinians aren't allowed to be on, to drive on, to visit, to use. And they also use Palestinian resources like water and Palestinian lands and agricultural lands. Um, so even going to one of the main cities, like Ramallah, I'll go back to the map. To go to Ramallah, which is right here, going from Bethlehem to Ramallah is about 20 minutes drive, so it's very close by. But since I'm not allowed to use roads that are for settlers only, and I'm not allowed to drive into Israel, I'm not allowed to take my car into those gray territories, I would have to drive all the way to almost Jericho, and then drive up north, and then go northern to Ramallah, and then come back to Ramallah. And that journey would take around 2 hours. But now with checkpoints and more difficulties on road and settlers attacks that are happening on that route, it could take a whole day, and sometimes it might not be possible to even for it to happen. So you would need to just you'll be stuck all day on those checkpoints, and maybe you will just give up and make your way back if you're able to. Um, So, as you've seen, the map is divided between West Bank and Gaza. And realities for Christians in Palestine that Palestinian Christians are indigenous of the land. When I give the example of people asking me, when did you convert? It's because they assume that there's no Christians in Palestine, and Palestine is only has Muslims in it, and that's it. But no, that's where Christianity started. So of course there are Christians in Palestine, and we are Arabic speaking, and we're small in numbers. We've, of course, got smaller in numbers with more and more occupation, with more and more challenges and difficulties we're experienced. That once we were more than or almost 20, 25% or 30% of the land to now becoming less than 1% or 1.5% of the land, which is decreasing numbers that demonstrate that there might not be Christians in where Christianity have started at some point. But even with this small numbers, we do have a very high impact on the community. We don't consider ourselves as minorities in that sense. We have very important and big educational systems, like what Cole mentioned. Bethlehem University is, for example, a Catholic university. High school and local schools are known for their Christian schools, and they're known for their best education. And everyone wants to be a student, and it's a privilege to be a student in one of those systems. It's same as healthcare. Hospitals and Christian hospitals are known for their good services, and civil society and nonprofit organizations, like the organization I'm sharing with you about, the Women Empowerment Organization, which I'll talk a bit more about, and even in advocacy and politics and certain cities in Palestine are only allowed, or the laws are allowed to have Christian mayors, for example. And we've just had our elections, and in Bethlehem, for example, and we're waiting for the final results. So it's just happening, and we're looking forward to see it and to learn who the new mayor would be of Bethlehem. But giving that context, I want to highlight that we all face the same challenges. Some would think that because we're a minority or Christians, we somehow have a different privilege or some different treatments by Israel and what's happening on ground by the occupation or apartheid system. But no, it's an I don't like to use the word system because systems make it seem that it's something that's organized, but it's or something you can navigate, but it's not. It's like oppression that's happening on Palestine doesn't differentiate between Christians and Muslims. So we all fall under the same apartheid system. Like the roads that I'm not allowed on is also the same roads that my Muslim neighbor is not allowed on. The laws that are applied or the persecutions that are happening in Gaza does not differentiate, or the genocide that's happening does not differentiate between what religion it is. We face same movement restrictions, as I mentioned, the checkpoints or the settlers only roads. I This Easter is another example of movement restrictions and also faith restrictions. As Easter was just a month ago, we weren't allowed to access the Holy Sepulchre. It was closed by Israel. And the religious people weren't able to, clergy people weren't able to go, Christians weren't allowed to go, even if you have like an Israeli ID and you're in a close proximity. But I also, as a Christian, didn't get a permit to access Jerusalem, didn't have a permit to access the church if it was open. So faith practices are restricted. And similarly to Muslims who are having Ramadan, which is one of the holiest month of the Muslim faith, weren't allowed to access Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is one of the holy sites for Muslims. So there's always consistent restrictions that are applied to all and instability and conflict. And it leads to what is called a soft immigration, where sometimes we're said like no one asked you to leave, no one forced you to immigrate, but how can you live when you're on survival mode the whole time, when you're not allowed to actually live to your full potential? So it forced people into immigration. That's why the majority of Christians have left the land, because of the lack of economic stability and for all the restrictions that I've mentioned. And of course, we can't forget what's happened and still going on in Gaza with the killings of almost 200,000. That's been declared as numbers, but it's known that the numbers are much higher than that because the bodies of killed people weren't found, or they got dissolved under the rubbles because people weren't able to get to them and count them as dead, and they're still counted as missing. Um, and it's been 2 years, more than 2 years now, almost three. And of course, how much it affects children and the famine and the breaking of agreements, of ceasefire agreements. And I want to just point out that a ceasefire is just a temporary solution to any situation that's going on, because our main goal and our call to action, basically, or our advocacy is to stop apartheid and to stop those systems of oppressions. Like the ones I mentioned that are happening in the West Bank might not seem as important or as big, or rightfully so, as a genocide. Of course, genocide, to act upon it is more urgent. And yes, the first call to action is a ceasefire, which has again been broken so many times and still is being broken till today. It's the ask of right to movement, of people being able to travel safely and freely, and to have and not just a ceasefire which could indicate that a peace have happened, but how can we make sure that justice has applied into those contexts that doesn't lead into more soft immigration causes, and which would, of course, feed into ethnic cleansing of the land and loss of more and more people. I want to also mention that there is church in Gaza. One of the oldest Christian communities in the world is in Gaza, and it's or also been bombed during the genocide, and many Christians have lost their lives. Even though the Christian community has gotten smaller and smaller, and now it's less than 1,000 people in Gaza that are Christians still living there. Of course, again, I'm repeating myself on that point, but it's important to note that it's because of the genocide, because of the apartheid system that's still ongoing for the Palestinians. And I always get asked, what can we do, or how do you navigate this. And as I mentioned, it's the image that I have in mind is that we're all a piece of a mosaic. And a mosaic consists of different small marbles or stones that come together and shape this beautiful piece of art. And that's how I view life. That's how I view our Christian faith. That's how I imagine when we are called to be the one Christian or one body of Christ. It's like, what does that mean? It's one body, but it's different pieces and different body parts and different functions and importance. And but we all create one piece at the end. So when the mosaic to peace come to mind is a reminder that peace is a creation and it is our divine duty. Peace is a just, it's not just the absence of war. As I mentioned, it's not just the stop of ceasefire, but an act of force that builds and nurtures. And peace is the act of creation. God, who is a creator of peace, we too are called to create. But what can we create to bring peace and just peace into our challenging realities? We can mobilize, uplifting marginalized voices, like this webinar and your presence in this webinar right now, and creating hope and engaging in meaningful dialogues to foster understanding. And when I personally reflect on this and how can a piece of the mosaic apply, my thoughts is working with young women. And I'm mentioning my own example doesn't mean that's the example of everyone else, because as I mentioned, we are all different pieces of the mosaic and have different skills, different callings, and different blessings that we have. And how can we shape that to add more to the mosaic and achieve that full image of a beautiful art piece together. Um, and the question that led my work is what I'm sharing with you right now. Like, what would the world look like if all God's creation was able to live in peace and justice and in their full potential? And of course, being a woman that grew up in the West Bank in the Palestinian society, of course, that's where my heart has led the work into working with a young adult and young women. Um, that's where I started Khayari organization. It got registered officially as a nonprofit in 2023. So one of the difficult years that we have experienced, and I personally and collectively, I can say we went through in this lifetime. Of course, not forgetting the Nakba, not forgetting the huge catastrophe that the Palestinian people have went through already, and it's still emphasizing the importance of such initiative. And to give context, like Khayari is an Arabic word that means my choice. And the women chose that name for the organization through a focus group that we had together. And we focus on women's leadership and economic empowerment. And that goes into a lot more. I wish there's a better phrase that would summarize what we're really focusing on, because it's not just that. There's a lot of layers that we need to work on to achieve, of course, leadership and economic empowerment. It's a safe space that we create together for the women and with each other, which is essential when there's lack of safety and there you can literally sometimes not feel safe in any spot that's like a geographical spot in Palestine. But at least how can we create a community of women that come together and at least have this space where they can safely express what they're going through and their feelings and emotions and fears, and find a network of women that would support and uplift each other during some of the difficult situations and circumstances. And it is a space where they meet, the young adult women, they meet, and we meet as well their emerging needs that are going on, like whatever they need support in and whatever they require, we are here to provide it for them. How can we support you with this? Of course, we are not the expert in everything they need. We always give 100% what we can, but we also outsource other services and other important things that they ask for. We focus on three themes: on identity, communication, and conflict management. And what I mean that we focus on those, we raise awareness and we give trainings in those fields. And why is this important? Is because it's what's happening in the Palestinian society for women. There is the absence of female leadership. There's only 3 out of 24 women in ministerial posts, and only 11% of women hold general director roles in Palestine, which is a very low number of examples of women leading initiatives and leading the people. And the high unemployment rate for youth in general, it's almost 47% of unemployment rate for youth. And for women who are actively seeking work opportunities is up to 63%. I'm talking about young adult for women. And those statistics are prior to the genocide in 2023. So you can only imagine how worse those numbers had got. And Palestinians are the most educated people in the world. Like we're very knowledgeable. We almost everyone goes to school, almost everyone goes to uni or an equivalent to get education. But to have that met with the reality of unemployment is very difficult. It's very discouraging. And how can you grow as a person and as an individual if you don't get the practical experience or you don't get the economic outcome of your education to be able to support yourself, your family, and your future to have a next step to move into? And of course, there's the gender imbalance, which is an international and worldwide issue where the cultural norms and expectations of women, and it does exclude women from decision making and restricts their own personal choices in life. And that's where we highlight the leadership parts of our trainings, where it's not just leadership, how can you lead, but others, but how can you lead your own choices and your own life and such cultural norms that are implied in the community. So I think I shared our vision already. Is to work and to create those spaces for women in the themes that I mentioned, and our mission would be to build the capacity of young Palestinian women through coaching, skills development, safe, supportive environments that respond to their evolving needs, strengthening their identity, communication, and conflict understanding, and enabled informed leadership and meaningful life choices. Um, we work with young adult women, and the ages we work with are roughly between 18 to 30. I'm saying roughly because we did have a couple of few participants, more than couple, few participants coming to us in the age of 37. There's one in early 40s, and there's like, this is a training that I really need in my life right now, and I know I don't fit the age group. Can I still join? And of course, we welcome them to join such initiative, and it's been very helpful for them as they've shared with us. And we do have a group of mixed religions in our trainings. We have 60% Muslim participants and 40% Christian participants. And I'm sharing this knowing that, yes, there is a less, it's not 50-50 when it's exactly, but it's also a very true or even beyond the true demographic of the Palestinian demographic right now. When I'm sharing that there's less than 2% Christians in Palestine, and to have 40% of the participants be Christians is a very important balance to show that of what we have in our training. And how we do our trainings. We do mental and emotional support. We have group check-ins, space for grief, fear, and hope. We do have, for example, on the first week that the Iran-Israel hits that happened in March, we responded with an emotional and psychosocial support session immediately. The universities have stopped meeting in person, so women didn't have space to at least meet with peers and with friends and support groups. Everyone was scared and at home, basically bound to their own safe spaces. So we had an online session with an expert in not just telling them what to feel or not just telling them how to achieve safe space and self-care, but to hold a space that they're right now together. We've already established that we're a community. We've already established the friendship. What are we feeling now, and how can we express it? So we even used questions and art techniques and conversations, and a lot have shared honest feedback and dialogues during that time that was much needed. And of course, some breathing exercises that we held together. And that's one example of what we do and how we apply that in practice of what's happening on ground. And we also work on roots and identity. Um, we work on personal identity and social identity. Women need to understand who they are as an individual before understanding who they are in the community, and it leads into it anyways. We of course share about Palestinian history. We share about Palestinian tatreez, which is embroidery, and I'm giving that as a specific example because it's part of our heritage, and it's embroidery for women to come together and do embroidery. It was a way of as well of bringing emotional support to each other. So it's beyond just cultural training or heritage exercises that we're giving. We're also creating a more or feeding more into the safe space where women come together, and while they're doing embroidery, they're having conversations, they're sharing about stories, they're sharing experiences, and you would be surprised by how much it brings out of pain, but also of joy and relief of mutual understanding. And of course, there's the interfaith dialogue that we do have. One of the examples, we were invited to Oman, Muscat, Oman, for an interfaith dialogue. Of course, unfortunately, it was planned to happen the end last week of March of this year. Of course, it got postponed due for safety and liability reasons and travel restrictions. So we're aiming to push that till October this year. And for some, it'll be their first time traveling to meet other traveling ever. For some, it'll be their first time meeting women who are from a different Arab-speaking country, because Arab-speaking countries are not allowed to enter into Palestine through Israel, so they don't get the chance to meet. So we're providing this opportunity. And again, there's the faith element where Christians and Muslims will have an interfaith dialogue to foster understanding between their religions and different perspectives. And we also focus on leadership and soft skills, whether it's communication, communication techniques, but whether it's through communications on paper, on CV writing, on cover letters, and how you apply for a job, and all the practical skills that they need to have to get better opportunities for their future, how to do teamwork, and how to build projects together. And all those skills will elevate their profile, will elevate their skills and what they can offer to the opportunities that might open up for them. In the economic empowerment, as I mentioned, we also train them on CVs, how to do interviews. We provide internship opportunities and basic skills with financials, how to arrange that and how to be smart about budgeting, whether for a project or personal life and in your family, especially in those very difficult economic situations we're going through. And so far, we've reached 100 women since 2023, and we've had 7 training cycles completed so far with different groups of women. Some of the voices from Khayari community, we have Mirna, who said, joining Khayari was a turning point in my journey. I realize I'm part of a movement that plants life and hope in difficult realities. Or Majd says, self-care is about caring for both body and mind. I learned to notice my emotions and respond with calm and reflection. And as I shared with you, the Mosaic to Peace reflection that I have on my own personal life, and I invite you to walk with us with that image in mind. And some of the ideas that thought about is that you can um, bring those voices of women into your communities, whether through creating space for real conversations about Palestine women, like this one, or invite, host, or join a Zoom with Khayari women. We sometimes announce for at least twice a year, we announce for Zoom calls to hear women speak. And for them, they're sharing for the first time to an audience or in English, and but they always feel the love of the supportive community, and they grow a lot by sharing and giving those um, opportunities. And of course, if you are in Palestine, to have space to meet with those women in person. Um, and to share one story at least with your community about what you heard today about Khayari, or if you get to meet those women or hear their stories, to be active in bringing those conversations and sharing those conversations beyond a group of people who've already heard the same thing together. And I invite you to stay connected with us through our social media. You can find us under the name Khayari Organization on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. And we share a lot, like we share every time we have a sharing from the women and what we do activities with them on those platforms. And you can stay updated with their stories. And that's how you can have a source of stories you can share yourself. And all the stories that are shared, if they're not asked to be anonymous, we of course share the name and the photo of the person who's sharing, of course, with their consent. And I ask you to pray with intention for the women behind those stories, for the women that you see their faces and hear their names and or read about them. And you can also give to Khayari organization to sustain and grow this work that we're doing, as I mentioned, in some of the most difficult times we're going through right now in this in our lifetime as young adults. I want to keep time for questions and answers, so I'll just leave you with this slide on how to stay connected. And you can make your donation through this link and or QR code that's on the screen. And of course, I'm sharing my contact info in case you would like to be in direct contact. You can take a screenshot or just a photo or call. I don't know what you suggest. Maybe we can share the
Yeah.
slides.
Yeah. I'll thanks so much, Areej. Yeah, I'll send the link out as well to all those who registered for this webinar. So you guys will have the link directly to the Khayari page if you are really keen to financially support the work of Khayari. And of course the social media and the website as well to keep up to date with their work and their projects and what Areej gets up to on the ground with these communities who are doing some pretty awesome and really important work and really difficult work at a time like this obviously as well. Um, mm. Areej, thanks so much for sharing all of that. Some really helpful insights into the context as well on the ground in Palestine and into the context behind the important work that you're doing with Khayari. Just a reminder for people, I've got a few questions that I'm going to kind of kick off with, but if you do have any questions, please chuck them in the chat in the Zoom message here, and I'll field those through to Areej. But yeah, Arish, I just wanted to ask like the story behind how Khayari got started. Like what inspired you or moved you to get this group going and what did that look like?
Yeah. Um, well, it started with just in my whole life, during my whole life, I've always worked with young adults. I've always, whatever work I get assigned to, I always shift it into grassroots work, and it always turns into working with young adults. And all the way to the point where during COVID, I asked to co-facilitate and give a training with a university that's based in Berkeley, California, in the US for Palestinian students. So it was an online cohort. Again, was COVID. Everything was online during that time. So it was leadership training to Palestinians that I was co-leading and recruiting for with the university. But after or during those 2 years of COVID, we continued the training successfully. But then we got the program and the university got pressured and even attacked and threatened by a Zionist lobby that they would affect their funding, they would shut down the university, they want to shut down the entire program that's benefiting a lot of students, not just Palestinians. It was a local US program that they've extended the training to Palestinians as well. And to see how much education is considered a threat to the Zionist lobby when it's not even political, when it's just about leadership, when it's for young adults, where everyone was just thriving and doing their best during COVID. Everyone was going through those challenges. Was a reality, not just a reality check. It was a clear invitation to continue that work, even if it was challenged by Zionist lobbies. It's like, how can I translate that into women-led, Palestinian-led work that's local? And I don't want to wait for the Zionist lobby to keep pressuring Palestinian initiatives or other countries' initiative and shutting them down because they're scared of losing their reputation or financial support. And that's where it's like, okay, let's look again. How can I work with young adults in that direction? And what's my calling? And the reflection of the mosaic of peace, and where do I see myself in part of the mosaic? And of course, I reflected on my own personal story and journey as a Palestinian woman, and where the most difficult challenges I faced during that growing up, and how much looking for opportunities for leadership and even economic opportunities didn't come easy in a space that lacks all those opportunities, where there's barely any jobs, barely any um, um, resources, and they're very scattered at the same time. So how, like, you need to work very hard to find those opportunities and those resources. So how can I bring them together on a silver plate to those women that they would because of all the other challenges and difficulties they're going through, how can we make this a bit easier for them to experience? So basically, this organization had came out from that internal need of, I wish this was there when I was going through that phase then. And it's only been 10 years when I was in their shoes. So I would love to consider that that need is very relevant. And I would like to also highlight that it's, even though, yes, it grew out of that personal need that wasn't there, um, I make sure that we always have consistent focus groups of women that are going through um, university right now, or the age group we're working with, because we need to stay relevant. We need to, as I said, it's for their emerging needs. So what is emerging now? And with every training we give, it leads into community creation. So they start with that training, and we start with that, and we build that safe space, and then it leads into the bigger community of Khayari, where all the other trainings that started this community, they all come together. So you can imagine how fast this community is growing. And with every end of each of those training, we always have focus group work with that same group. It's like, okay, you've took the training now. What do we need to change? What's your vision for the future? What's emerging now? How can we answer for it? So it's everything keeps changing. Everything we're delivering, everything we're working on keeps shifting, depends on their needs. So you can imagine how much work that takes, but it's very important. It's for them towards the end, like it's for them. And the past 2 weeks, they've been asking for a chance to be out in the nature and just have some women's circle time outside, like with some scenery and some grass. So we're gonna have to make that happen because they're asking for it, and they're understanding and grasping what we're doing very fast. It's like, okay, they come to us with this. Like, we feel like we need to be out in the nature. The weather is becoming warmer, is nicer. They come to us. It's like, please do that for us. It's like, okay, of course, we're gonna work on that. So if you stay tuned on our social media, you probably see that happening soon. You would see the outcome of that request.
That's cool. That's awesome. I just think it's a beautiful time of year as well in Palestine at the moment for being outdoors in the spring. Very green and very flowery time of year. I was also just looking at some of our participants here are keen outdoors women who should go over to Palestine and lend a hand with some of that mahi. That's real cool. Areej, also as you're just chatting about the access to education as well, that was just reminding me of a number of the things that we've seen even just in the last year as well, right? With the educational bookshop in Jerusalem being raided and books being taken away simply for having the Palestinian flag on them, like really just arbitrary things that are clearly targeted at limiting people's access to education. So really, yeah, really emphasizes the importance of the work that you guys are doing. And of course, schools across the West Bank facing raids and tear gassing and limitations on people being able to reach those places. We've got someone in the chat, Eva Maria, has asked, for your workshops and trainings, how are participants selected and how long is each training?
So we do have basic training and advanced training so far. And for both, they're about 10 sessions. And especially for the basic training, as I said, like it's an introductory training. So they take the training and then they turn into part of the community. So it never stops after those 10 sessions that they take. It's not like, okay, we're done, take a certificate, and now don't talk to us again. We always make sure that we continue having sessions where we grow together, where we learn about important or relative matters together. And how they're selected, we ask women to fill out a form, a Google form with general questions, and we almost accept everyone unless for any reason they don't make the criteria of being maybe underage, under 18, or that they demonstrate like a huge um, um, answers of one of some of the questions we ask is what's your view of the other and how would you what does that mean to you in a Khayari community, and if they um, answer that and say, well, I don't want to give that an example because it never happened, but that's why we have that question. Like we need to make sure that everyone has the readiness to be open to interfaith dialogue, to be open to be part of a community and not just there because I want to take a training right now. Maybe I'll find a certain opportunity and then I don't want to be part of the training. So if they anymore or part of the community. So if they at least if they don't come with that interview, with that perspective or with that intention, we almost accept everyone who applies to the training, and it's growing every time we announce for a new training because the women are like, I have more friends, I want them to be part of the community. So yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. Do you have a specific story of someone who's come through the program or is still in the program and kind of what that's looked like for them? Kind of coming through that and then how that shaped them back in their life kind of outside of the Khayari program?
Yeah, we always do a follow-up a meeting and gathering after 3 months of their graduating from the basic training. And we ask them, like, where are you at in life? How was the training supportive with you in your journey? And you hear the general answers of, I was shy, and now I have the confidence to share my opinion, my thoughts, and now I lead groups, and now I found a job, or now I'm doing more initiatives. Khayari community was my first ever interaction with a community that's beyond my university, and now I'm more excited to take more initiative and be a part of more organizations and programs in the area, which of course we love that, and we always bring them networking opportunities with different organizations that we of course trust and know their work and know they will help them grow. So they would have the opportunities to join those communities as well. But if I have to choose one story that stands out the most for me is one of the training sessions is given by our chairwoman of the board, and she's a woman with disability. She's on a wheelchair, and she's in HR with the YMCA. And I'm mentioning that because it's relevant to the story. And so she gives them the session about like my rights at work and how do I apply for, like she helps them understand how do they apply for jobs and job interviews and their rights at work as an HR in her HR field. So one of the participants, when she joined the program, she has a hearing disability, and she had an implant made, and she asked us not to tell others that she has this implant, and she can hear okay, and she just wants to blend in with everyone else. So we never shared with anyone. Like, of course, that's your choice. Because part of the application that they apply for, we ask them if they have any needs or specific needs we need to know about. So that's when she shared with us in confidence that that's what she's going through. And so after they had the training with the chairwoman of the board, she's on a wheelchair, she's giving training, she's very competent, and she's teaching them how to find opportunities and what she's accomplished in her life. And she does share that despite her disability, like she, of course, because of her disability, she went through more challenges, and she wasn't shy to say that, and she wasn't sharing about her experience from a place of perfectionism. Like, no, things are difficult, and I faced so much, and this is what I had to go through to be here. Um, and after this participant heard that, I never checked with her again about her disability specifically. I never checked with her, like, how do you feel now about your disability? But Cole, you know, I've been to the conference, Church at the Crossroad conference in September, and we had a booth there, and there was 600 participants at the conference. And I asked the women, I told them, I'm going to be at this conference. I want to play a video at the booth, and there are going to be about 600 participants. I just wanted to let you know. But of course, I want your consent, and I want some of your feedback if you'd like to record the video. And for the women who were interested, they sent us their video recordings. They did a selfie. And I received a video from this participant that I've just mentioned with the hearing disability. And she's sharing about her hearing disability.
Wow.
And I was like, I had to check with her. I sent her a message. It's like, hi, thank you for your video. I love it. But I also want to check with you because you mentioned that this is a private matter. You didn't want to share about your disability. What changed? Why are you sharing now about your
Mm,
disability to a 600 plus people who might be at the conference? Like they might see that this is not a private video. I made it very clear. And she said, I'm encouraged to share now because of that experience with the women, with the chairwoman who shared about her experience. And she made it clear that despite of her disability, what she was able to do and the challenges, and all the participants were able to see or how hard she had to work, and we're able to see her accomplishments even more because of what she had to go through. I
mm,
want to inspire others, and I want to be this example to people. And that for me, including all the other changes that we hear about in their life, but that for me was a very drastic change that we saw in someone's, I would say, entire life. Like
mm,
this woman is forever changed in how she think of herself and how she perceives her disability as a point of strength and not a weakness that she would need to shy from or hide from others. Like she can now live to her full potential because of that.
mm. Oh man, that's cool. What a beautiful story. Well, beautiful example, not story. Someone's, lived experience. That's, yeah, wow. Um,
Mm.
So we've got Evelyn in the chat. I should have mentioned as well, Eva Maria, who asked that question earlier, said, Shukran kathira Areej. I love your name too. So we've also had a question we've had a question from Glenda that I'll come back to shortly. But Evelyn has said, would you ever think about expanding to younger women once the community grows? Slightly different program, but similar, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, slightly different contexts and different struggles and yeah.
I love this question, but it's making me expose unexposed plans that we have for the program. Basically, I'm trying to arrange like a TOT, a training of trainers for the women who already are part of the Khayari community. because I want them to be able to give this training to younger women, and I want them to lead it. So I want them to give back to the community. And it's not the idea is there, but it's a bit postponed with everything that's going on. It's like everything is working a bit slower in achieving our vision. It affects our programming sometimes, our vision for the program. We had to downsize a lot of our work because of, again, we started in June 2023. That's when we got our registration. So it is one of the most difficult times in an organization lifetime to be doing this work. But yes, Evelyn, I think I love your question, and yeah, I appreciate it a lot. So hopefully, when we get the TOT training for the community, we'll be able to expand that. We do have plans for the women in giving training, giving back. Basically, it's part of it, giving back to younger generation. But they also volunteer back into Khayari communities, and they help us lead trainings for other groups. It encourages them a lot to take leadership, to see how we do work behind the scenes, and to get inspired in how they can lead different programs. But they also get part of the intercultural training where we build a network. Khayari organization made a networking or a partner organization in the US where they bring groups, and Khayari women meet with them, and they do a cultural exchange opportunities where they either cook together, they have meals together, they go on trips together, and they experience the Palestinian culture with those women. And it's such a great opportunity for those women who've just learned more and more about their identity and heritage and culture to reflect that in their conversations and work and practice their English and grow in that department.
I'm hearing the need for a Christchurch, a New Zealand Palestine connection
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be established. And yeah, and for people who are keen to support whatever direction Khayari kind of goes in from here and continue supporting that work, remember I'll send the link out. But the best way to keep in touch is to sign up to Khayari's socials and website for updates. Another question, just on the same line as the previous one, this one from Derek. Given the difficulties of travel around the West Bank you mentioned, can Khayari operate across the West Bank? Are participants able to come to training from across the West Bank communities, or is it mostly those from inside Bethlehem at the moment?
Yeah. So that's exactly what I mean. We had to downscale our work. Our vision prior to October 2023 was to, and the plan was, that's our strategic plan, was to work with the entire West Bank with ideas on how we can include Gaza at least online in the year or two after we test and develop our curriculum 100. It's like it's already, the curriculum is already developed, but after putting it in practice, of course, you adjust to it. And as I mentioned, we have a community and grassroots approach, so it's always under development. So we had the intention to include Gaza after a year or two of implementing the program. But with the genocide starting in 2023, we had to uh, downscale our program into the Bethlehem area. So we already had participants from all around the West Bank. And our first meeting was supposed to be mid-October 2023. That meeting, of course, got canceled. There were checkpoints that would not allow us to move even within the city. So even in the Bethlehem district, we have some people who are from the villages surrounding Bethlehem in the Bethlehem district that were blocked with checkpoints, and they weren't able to leave and come to the city. So we
Mm,
couldn't, some of the participants that signed up then, I've never met in person because since then the restrictions have never really lifted. Like they're less, they're a bit more open, but there's still checkpoints, and it's a huge liability and it's a risk to ask participants to go through those checkpoints.
mm,
So we had to downscale to at least meet with the Bethlehem area, whoever can come to the meetings and are safe to come. So we met with only Bethlehem areas, and when the village people from the village can come, of course they were welcome to join with their safety concerns. Um, in the past, so in 2025, we started organically having participants coming to us from other cities like Hebron and Jerusalem. We didn't truly work on expanding back into covering the entire West Bank because of the checkpoints and restrictions that are imposed on us and liability. Um, but organically, there were already participants who are studying in Bethlehem University or close by universities and wanted to just stay for our trainings after their studies. So yes,
Mm,
we have more participants than just the Bethlehem area. But till today, I don't believe it's the best way to go back to how we were planning things in including the entire Bank area, considering how much more checkpoints have been
mm,
on roads. And again, it's not safe for them to, or I don't want women to come to a safe space, but experience a lot of harassments on their way here.
mm,
Yes, they might make it safe to our meetings, but the experience of getting to a meeting where they're harassed by checkpoints and much more and settlers attack is not the purpose of our meetings. And it's just so the intention now we have a plan to, of course, this is still under construction, but our plan is to have different community organizers in different cities that would help women come together without having to cross checkpoints. But that means a huge reconstruction of how we work things and, of
mm.
course, budget. So once we meet that, that's definitely our intention to include back in the entire West Bank and maybe find a way to meet twice a year, all of us together in safe setting or to leave the country and maybe meet somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's yeah, exciting thinking of the potential when things shift in a good instead of a negative direction locally. Just yeah, such awesome work.
And
The final question that we've just got here before we finish off, I'm aware we're reaching 9 o'clock, but who was it? Yeah, Glenda has just asked in the chat up a bit further. It seems hard for us in our safe southern space here in Aotearoa, or possibly we have, I think, some tuning in from Fiji as well, um, to grasp how you can continue to function with any degree of normality within Israeli military, of course, with the genocide in Gaza and the occupation and apartheid across the West Bank and within historic Palestine. How do you keep positive despite yeah, how do you keep positive, yeah, as a Christian when so much around you seems to be difficult, especially for women? What kind of keeps you going? What keeps your work with Khayari going? Um, yeah.
yeah, no, Glinda, I agree with you. I can't say I I don't like to promote like to romanticize the hope and resilience of the Palestinian people. What we're going through is harsh, is beyond like it's beyond just humanitarian aid, what's happening. It's horrific what the Palestinians were going through right now and have been going through the past almost 80 years. Um, and the circumstances that we're working with are getting more and more difficult. As I was registering the organization, I was still working in a difficult circumstances, but I didn't expect the genocide when I was registering that. So of course the experiences are filled with a lot of trauma. With keep in mind it's ongoing trauma. Like when we're working on mental health, we're not working on PTSD as if it's something that you experienced, but now we can talk about how can we get over it. It's something that's ongoing, and we're navigating that together. So I can't say it's amazing. I can't say it's glamorous. I would say that um, we do lose a lot of hope, and you would hear more people saying that no, we're not hopeful. We're just surviving, and it's true. And for me to keep bringing hope, because the minute I personally would lose hope, I won't stay in this country. Like I can't stay here. And the way I bring hope, or I find hope, is working with the communities that I know don't have the option to even leave, don't have the means, don't have the support, don't have they don't want to leave home basically. Whatever their reason is, they just don't want to leave home and they don't want to leave their family. And what still is their safe space, ironically, to use that term, despite the circumstances, because you would hear that, like, I'm still, as bad as things are here, I'm still safer here than being an immigrant or a refugee anywhere else in the world. I would just lose, that's when I'd lose my identity, my home, my family, and my language, and beyond that. Um, so you would hear that. So for me personally, to keep bringing that into my space is through the mosaic of peace image that I shared with you. I truly always have to find where I belong into that piece, and how can I utilize and help people figure out where they're at in that mosaic of peace and the work we're doing. And after a genocide that started, to initiate the first training after losing all the participants that were supposed to come together from all around the West Bank, after losing the funding, after losing the space we were supposed to meet in, after a lot of loss, to still come together, I would tell you that I was not very hopeful with the first meeting. I was I'm being maybe very honest that I felt like a hypocrite starting a meeting where we're promoting safe space, where everything doesn't feel space. But when those women come together and they share with you with a broken heart how important and how broken they are, and they finally found a space that can hold them, is when things start to make a sense where this is not, I'm not doing this for me. I'm not holding this space for me personally. This space is bringing me more things to deal with, but to hear the impact that it has on the women that lack those resources or the means, or it it can't not bring you some hope. At least in the circles that I'm working with and I'm focusing on.
Mm. Thanks, Areej. And yeah, it's I think it kind of cements how important the work is. That this is a form of resistance, helping people to hang on to their, as we say in Aotearoa, their whakapapa, their lineage, their heritage, whether that's through tatres or holding their cultural traditions, or just so many aspects. So very, very thankful for the work that you do and the time that you've given us here tonight. Um, yeah, and I'll just a reminder, I'll send people the links if you do feel like you can support Khayari, whether that's through your prayers or your finances or you're just staying connected, then please do. Um, yeah, I'll just close to pray and then give you guys a bit of a teaser for our next webinar coming up on the 27th. But just to close off, God, thank you so much for Areej, for her witness and her work. Thank you for the important work of Khayari and what that means for women in Bethlehem and what it means for communities across Palestine, God. We pray for all those on the ground, whether that's in the West Bank or those facing genocide in Gaza. And yeah, Lord, we pray for peace, we pray for justice, we pray for free Palestine soon. And Lord, we also pray for those up in Lebanon and those in Iran and those facing bombardment and violence across the region, that justice would roll down like a river and that peace would come, and that we would see a free Palestine, where women are truly empowered and free from all of the mechanics of Israel's violence, God. In your great name. Amen.
Mhm.
Areej, thank you so much again. I'm just going to share my screen quickly for just to plug our next workshop coming up on the 27th. Hopefully you can see that there. We're going to hear from Dr. Brian Dunn, who is a lecturer at the Pacific Communities University in Fiji, unpacking colonial narratives across the Pacific. So the influence of Christian Zionism and other kind of parallel narratives. So really excited for that conversation. That's 8 p.m. Wednesday, the 27th of May. We'll send a link out for that for those who've registered as well. But yeah, Areej, thank you so much for your work. Thanks for your time tonight. It's so great to see you as well, and sending all of our love and prayers to Bethlehem and to everyone that you're working with.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin. Lovely meeting everyone. Thank you so much.